Another Chance Ministry. Jesus, the way, the truth, the life. John 14:6. Researched and posted by Brother Ephraim Tejuman. Jesus said, "The truth will set us all free. Lies are but lies. Our God don't lie." This is the history of Faith Bible Church of Los Angeles, California, Incorporated, which is a non-profit religious organization, and the legacy of Bishop Nene Ramientos, the founding pastor of Faith Bible Church of Los Angeles, California. In Matthew, verse 16 to 26, "For what is a man profited, if he shall gain the whole world and lose his soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul?" May this be a proof that life on earth is not as Macbeth muse, a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. A tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. But as Henry Wadsworth Longfellow puts it, "Life is real, and life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returns," was not spoken of the soul. Indeed, there is something more to life, more than what meets the eye, that life on earth is but to what lies beyond. As I walk with God, I know each step that I take makes me see more clearly what life is all about. Life is a gift from God for us to enjoy, as beautifully stated in the historic Westminster Confession. The chief end of life is to know God and enjoy Him forever. Amen to that.
And when Christ died on that cross, we don't understand all that happened on that cross. But we know one thing, that He took the hell and the judgment that you deserved and I deserved because of our sins. He took it on that cross. And that's why that terrible expression comes from His lips, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Because you see, the very meaning of hell is separation from God. And in that terrible moment, a shadow passed between God the Father and God the Son for the first time since eternity began. Christ dying for you, and He suffered the pangs of hell.
The reason I left the local church because of the number of invitations for me to engage in international ministries. The word became May Paris. Foremost was the indigenous Christian group based in Indonesia and Netherlands, named
hari-hari ini kita diperhadapkan dengan situasi dan kondisi yang tidak mudah. Tetapi kita harus berjuang untuk dapat beribadah melayani Tuhan. Gereja Pantai Kosta Tabernakel Yesus Gembala, Yesus Ajaib merupakan keluarga di mana Anda dapat bergabung bersama-sama kami, bertumbuh dalam pengajaran firman Tuhan.
Actually moved on to be a full 8-day campaign starting in Pangasinan in northern Philippines, and then we are culminating now with this final 3 days here in Metro Manila.
Would you please welcome my friend Will Graham, everybody?
This is going to be the first time that all three generations not only preached in the same city, the same country, but actually the same venue. So Billy Graham in 77, Franklin in 2006, and now Will Graham here in 2019.
Amazing proof of God's love is the cross. There's nowhere in all the world where you'll find an expression of God's love like the cross.
Well, I thank the Lord. Since 1977, as a 15-year-old teenager looking for the meaning of life, I was brought to this park. That was when Dr. Billy Graham was preaching the Word of God.
I am the vine. He's the vine, you're the branch. Are you connected with the Lord Jesus Christ?
I was a gang leader in our school. We have 500 members, and I praise God. My turning point was right here in this park, where the gospel of Christ was preached. And what a joy to be here, to be able to serve, to be able to once again pray for people who are seeking the Lord, who would be ushered to eternity, would be given a chance to serve the Lord.
My friends, God sent His Son Jesus on a rescue mission.
Mga kaibigan, pinadala ng Diyos sa kanyang anak para iligtas kayo at ako.
He thinks you're one of the most precious things in this world.
Kaibigan, sinasabi ng Diyos na minamahal ka sa mundo ito.
That's why He bled on the cross just for you.
Kaya siya'y namatay sa krus sa Kalbaryo para sa iyo.
There's so many people here who are just seeking, to fill the gap that they have in their heart. and finally they get an opportunity like this.
Out of the cries of your heart, you can cry out to God tonight. And I promise you, He can hear your cry. He's waiting for you to call out to Him.
I cried a lot. I gave everything that I felt to Him. I just trust Him. And I said, Lord, it's all yours. I can keep it on my own. I need you.
It feels like God calling me to come in front. It is a very encouragement to hear that Jesus loves us despite of our shortcomings and all our sins. And that point, that message from the Lord has brought me our peace tonight.
So Tita Euphemia is 75 years old, and she described the feeling as if she said to me that as if something went inside of her that made her happy, and she felt at peace, and she felt wonderful. That was her experience right now.
You just can't prepare to see what you're going to end up seeing. It's very overwhelming.
The power of the Holy Spirit is so real. Indeed, it can change hearts. And I pray that families continue to come to know the Lord, because when families come to know the Lord, communities do come to know the Lord. And from communities, it can change an entire nation.
How come you landed in that small church in Sun Valley, California, and then you helped them for almost 7 years, helping them to revive that dying church, and they evict you? Come on, man. How can you explain that? Well, this is the story. Okay, this is my brother, Noni Abo. He is a contractor, licensed contractor. Then I met him 2007. Then I told him about I want also to build a church. And he asked me, what, are you going to be a pastor? No, I said, structure so that I can rent into the independent churches. Well, he was just smiling, and he told me, friend, you have to learn a lot of things about Christianity and churches. Okay, if you want to build churches, I'm a licensed contractor. I am going to train you so that you know if you're going to do that, you know what you're doing, okay? So I said, okay, why not? So then he trained me and became his assistant. and look at the car. I thought they're doing drugs. So then after that, I just lie down and I heard an explosion. And then they run. It's a white Dodge Ram.
Yeah.
Anyway, we don't want to get involved in that. Because they might throw, they might do something to the church or anything. Unless it's in our property, so, but this is outside. I cannot sleep because I'm having a headache and I'm coughing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's the reason I... Where's the fire department? While we're doing our work there in Lucinda, we're doing some work over here because Pastor Noni told me, okay, let's let Pastor Hector to build up the church. Because actually the condition of the church is not like this before. Since you don't have any baggage in you, can you just look at the church? You see, like maybe I can call myself the first custodian of this church under Pastor Hector.
So when the devil starts to attack us and discourage us, Jesus, we love you, Lord. Your name is miraculous, Jesus. Your name is supernatural, Jesus. Jesus.
Nowadays we have staff, we have videographers, we have photographers, we have sound people, we have volunteers, we are a different organization.
(1997) became a chartered church, and then the title was entrusted to the Foursquare as like a family, part of the organization.
Of ownership known as a Foursquare charter church. The Foursquare bylaws describe a charter church as a church established and chartered by International Church of the Foursquare Gospel as a local Foursquare church, or a church not previously established by International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, which is elected to become a local Foursquare church, having no legal existence, articles of incorporation, bylaws, or other organizing documents apart from those of the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, and which has transferred title to all of its property into the name of International Church of the Foursquare Gospel with no possibility of reversion unless specifically agreed to by the board. In essence, the Foursquare denomination is comprised of individual congregations who are all linked together under a single corporate entity and share responsibility for all property. Much like these train cars are each distinct in their form and function, yet they comprise a single train with the same destination, cargo, and track. In this example, the track would represent the Foursquare bylaws, the governance document that keeps us all moving in the same direction. Since Foursquare charter churches are all linked together into a single train, whatever happens to one car ultimately impacts the entire train. The Global Foursquare Church is a movement comprised of local church congregations around the world who share a common mission and message. This movement began with a single church in 1923 and has spread to over 140 countries around the globe. In the United States, the Foursquare Church was incorporated in 1927 and ultimately implemented a modified Episcopal governance and shared ownership of property under a single religious nonprofit corporation. Historically, there have been many benefits to this structure, since shared ownership of property has ultimately provided a strong asset base for the denomination. And because of that, for several decades, many local churches have been able to acquire, construct, or renovate church properties that may not have been possible without the strength of our combined asset portfolio. And this has resulted in huge savings over the years. However, these benefits also come with a cost and a shared responsibility. Purchasing, constructing, or renovating facilities results in added financial obligations like maintenance, insurance coverage, and other responsibilities that come with the territory when you own property. This structure also necessitates very thorough processes for vetting property-related decisions to ensure that each local congregation can sustain the obligations of property ownership so that the property doesn't become a liability that negatively impacts the local church or the Foursquare family as a whole. In many cases, this need for thorough vetting and review of numerous and often simultaneous property decisions around the nation can feel bureaucratic and unintentionally impede the goals of a local congregation. So in 2013, our movement began investigating alternative structures for property ownership that would empower the local church to control its property decisions while the Foursquare denomination retains authority for the polity of the church. In 2016, a historic decision was made by the Foursquare family when the convention body voted to amend our bylaws to provide a new option for property ownership at the local church level. Today, local Foursquare churches can operate under either of two models with respect to property ownership. The first is Foursquare's traditional model of ownership, known as a Foursquare charter church. The Foursquare bylaws describe a charter church as a church established and chartered by International Church of the Foursquare Gospel as a local Foursquare church, or a church not previously established by International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, which is elected to become a local Foursquare church, having no legal existence, articles of incorporation, bylaws, or other organizing documents apart from those of the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, and which has transferred title to all of its property into the name of International Church of the Foursquare Gospel with no possibility of reversion unless specifically agreed to by the board. In essence, the Foursquare denomination is comprised of individual congregations who are all linked together under a single corporate entity and share responsibility for all property, much like these train cars are each distinct in their form and function, yet they comprise a single train with the same destination, cargo, and track. In this example, the track would represent the Foursquare bylaws, the governance document that keeps us all moving in the same direction. Since Foursquare charter churches are all linked together into a single train, whatever happens to one car ultimately impacts the entire train. The second and new option for property ownership is called a Foursquare covenant church. The Foursquare bylaws describe a covenant church as a local church previously established by the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel that has elected, with board approval, to have a legal existence apart from that of the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel, and to affiliate with the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel by mutual agreement in a covenant relationship. Or a local church not previously established by or associated with the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel that is a separate legal entity that has elected to affiliate with the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel by mutual agreement in a covenant relationship, which obligates the local church to operate by the bylaws of the International Church of the Foursquare Gospel with the rights and duties pertaining thereto. In the case of a covenant church, this is a separate legal entity, yet there remains a binding connection with the Foursquare denomination by virtue of the covenant agreement, which is executed by the boards of both the local church corporation and the Foursquare Corporation. Under this arrangement, the local church agrees to be governed by Foursquare's bylaws and policies, but retains individual responsibility and authority over decisions concerning church property. Using the train illustration, The covenant agreement enables a local church to operate as a separate train using the same track, thus allowing an independent church corporation to operate as a Foursquare church and in accordance with Foursquare bylaws. Under this covenant arrangement, either party may terminate by following the prescribed process, but in doing so, the covenant church will discontinue its membership in the Foursquare denomination. So, how does a Foursquare covenant church differ from the historical model known as a Foursquare charter church? This diagram illustrates a side-by-side comparison of these two models. As you can see, the only differences between a Foursquare charter and covenant church relate to the decisions concerning the operation of local church property and related obligations such as insurance and internal Foursquare loans. But when it comes to the organizational structure, access to resources, or responsibility for commitments such as monthly reporting and extension tithe, a Foursquare covenant church will operate in every way as a Foursquare church. Covenant church leaders will enjoy all the benefits of being part of the Foursquare movement and will have full access to services like district events, community, and care, Foursquare retirement, the Center for Spiritual Renewal, and credentialing services. And although covenant churches are organized as separate corporations, leaders will still have full access to all Foursquare departments for consultation on issues like property, insurance, administration, plan giving, retirement, and legal issues. At the end of the day, the only real differences between a covenant and charter Foursquare church is that, for legal reasons, covenant churches are not able to participate in the Foursquare insurance program. But our amazing team is fully available to assist with consultation in obtaining a comparable insurance policy from a different provider. And although covenant churches will not be able to participate in internal ICFG loans, they are welcomed and encouraged to contact Foursquare Financial Solutions to apply for an FFS loan as needs arise. As you can see, this arrangement has been carefully crafted to provide options for property ownership while maintaining all of the important elements that make it such a benefit to belong to a family like Foursquare. So now let's take a moment to review the process required to become a Foursquare Covenant Church. For current Foursquare churches, the first step is to establish a local nonprofit corporation to serve as the legal entity that will hold title to church property. This corporation will need to have officers, as well as a board of directors, who will ultimately play a comparable role to that of the Foursquare Church Council. In order to establish a corporation, you will most likely need to get assistance from a professional to draft incorporation documents, and the district offices can provide a referral to vendors who have been pre-screened and already understand what documents are needed. Existing independent churches that want to join Foursquare probably already have a corporation in place, but it's also important to note that the senior pastor of any charter or covenant Foursquare church must hold an active Foursquare minister's credential. If this is not already in place, you can initiate this process through your local district office. The next step is for our district and central office teams to perform a cursory review of the incorporation documents and a few other important pieces of information that will be needed to ensure that everything's in place to proceed with the covenant agreement. Then it will be time to ratify and sign the covenant agreement, and this begins by a vote of the local church congregation and requires a 3/4 majority of the regular attenders to attest that they are in support of this agreement. This will be verified by the local church board members, who will be asked to sign the covenant agreement and confirm that this decision was ratified by a 3/4 majority of the congregation. From there, the signed agreement will go to the Foursquare Board of Directors for a board resolution, so that the covenant may be signed by a Foursquare corporate officer, and then the covenant agreement is complete. From that point forward, the church can begin to operate as a full-fledged Foursquare church, with the local church maintaining authority and responsibility for any decisions to buy, sell, lease, or renovate newly acquired property in accordance with Foursquare's policies and bylaws. We hope that this video has provided a helpful orientation to both the purpose and the process behind the Foursquare Covenant Church model, and pray that this important step opens the door wide to churches and ministers who want to join the Foursquare family in our shared mission to spread the gospel message around the world.
I would like to share a testimonial about what happened for the past 3 years when I'm doing those recording of all the videos in the school and our Bible study every morning. Actually, the audience sometimes is only my dog, Bella, and Yux, and me. And then the pastors, before, they are not really comfortable because the dog is looking at them like listening. But after a while, they get used to it, and my dog got used to it also, hearing the Word of God every day for the past 3 years. Do not bear false witness. The ninth of the Ten Commandments is, you shall not give false witness against your neighbor. This means two things. Do not lie when testifying in court, and do not lie, period. Whether inside or outside a courtroom, if people testify falsely in a courtroom, there can be no justice, and without even the hope of justice, there can be no civilization. However, one big obstacle to truth-telling is that believers in causes, including good causes, that don't place truth as a central value, will be very tempted to lie on behalf of their cause. Why is lying on behalf of good causes destructive? Because
down and know my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. There is no life without its God. Each restless heart beats so imperfectly. But when you come and I am filled with wonder, sometimes I think I glimpse eternity. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I
remodel the windows. We've already talked about it. I'm just going to have to firm some things up. The same people that are helping us, oh, such an amazing crew. They said, look how ugly your windows are. And I said, I agree. After they painted everything, they said, look at how ugly. And I wanted to go outside and go, look how ugly the windows are compared to what's happening all around. And I said, yes, Lord, new windows. New windows. And then we have a plan to put a basketball court in front, which will double as parking, yes, but I would like for your young people to come, just like when we were growing up here in this church. We didn't go home because we scrimmage. Every day we went and we scrimmage. And I'm hoping that we can do that. Is that going to cost some money? Yes, it will. But God is good that way. And I'm going to believe in faith. There are plans, of course. We always talked about buying that place across the street. We haven't given up on that. Those of you that expressed that vision before, I have never given up on that thought. And one day I would hope that we would be so financially strong that I can do what that person did to me yesterday, where he said, if you want to sell your church, we're funding in 90 days. I'm hoping that someday we can make them an offer they cannot refuse. Go somewhere else, but we want this place, the adjoining place. I'm believing that. Not in anger, not in discrimination, but knowing that we serve God. We want to build a multi-purpose hall in the back, a gymnasium, aside from the paving of the front. There's also this vision of building housing for the unfortunate, for homeless people. Build this transitional ministry. I'm sharing this to you so you can pray with it. But I am believing, and I hope you would believe with me, especially those of you who are pastors in this church, that someday, this generation of pastors, before anyone goes to heaven, we would see this, and we would do it. Scripture says, God will give your older man rings. I celebrated my birthday recently. I told my dad, I said, how old are you? I said, I'm 48. You're old now, son. And so I said, thank you. It's time for God to give the dreams. So I hope that dream burns eternal until the time that God takes us all. And then, even better dreams. Because then we will be in the presence of God. Oh, I pray we would continue on and serve God as He has called us. Let's all rise as we receive the benediction. We always have food in the back. We are never potluck. But today I think it's a little better than usual. So I would ask those of you, even if you're in a little bit of a hurry, to please sit down and partake of the food and celebrate with us. Anyway, some of you guys, I need to shake your hands. It's been a long time since I've seen you. We need to make our acquaintance and we need to meet. It is customary in this church that we give the benediction, and it goes like this. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you. The Lord be gracious to all of you. To you, to your children, to your children's children, to your children's children's children, now and forevermore. Amen. We'll see you at the back. Thank you.
Let me stand away so people can see it. the actual name is Real something, which is the Pastor Edwards. You know this? Pastor Edwards' name is on there twice. Because he had to change names. You see, we're getting a good amount of income. And most of the repairs that are being provided at the church are being done through the rental income. And I would say we're fortunate with most of them are paying and helping us. Somebody want to move? And you see our tithes. And of course, that special offering for the typhoon that we made. And I really don't want to go into a lot of detail as to all the expenses. If people want more details, I'm sure the accounting department, and if I can, I'll help to give you determinations of what we're spending money on. The repair and maintenance, that is where the modifications to the church is being charged. And I anticipate that number this coming year to be quite large. Just because of the improvements that we have planned will be at the point that now getting to be very expensive. There are big projects on the agenda, and hopefully they will come in the future. I can't say which ones they are because they're subject to change. But there are some big improvements coming. And again, if anybody wants some of the details, we'd be glad to explain them. But accounting is very boring, and most people don't enjoy looking at numbers. But and it shows that there was a slight income. Obviously, our intentions are not to make an income, but to put the money back in.
In the Ten Commandments, Commandments 6, 7, 8, and 9 are the ones that prohibit acts of evil: murder, adultery, stealing, and perjury. And then there is one commandment that prohibits the thing that leads to murder, adultery, stealing, and perjury. Which one is it? It's the last of the 10. Do not covet anything that belongs to others, not their spouse, their house, their servants, their animals, or any of their property. In order to understand this commandment and its unique significance, the first thing to understand is that this is the only one of the 10 Commandments that legislates thought. All the other commandments legislate behavior. In fact, of the 613 laws in the 5 books of Moses, virtually none prohibit thought. Why then does the 10 Commandments include a law that prohibits a thought? Because it is coveting that so often leads to evil. Or, to put it another way, coveting is what leads to violating the preceding 4 commandments, the ones against murder, adultery, stealing, and perjury. Think about it. Why do people do those things? In most instances, it's because they covet something that belongs to another person. Obviously, that is the reason people steal. Thieves covet their victims' property. But it is also the reason for many murders, and coveting is obviously the reason for adultery, wanting the spouse of another person. As for perjury, or bearing false witness in the language of the 10 Commandments, that is done in order to cover up all these other crimes that are caused by coveting. But in order to understand why coveting is the one thought that is prohibited in the 10 Commandments, and one of the only thoughts prohibited in the entire Hebrew Bible, we need to understand what coveting means, and equally important, what it doesn't mean. To covet is much more than to want The Hebrew verb lachmod means to want to the point of seeking to take away and own something that belongs to another person. Note that there are two operative elements here: seeking to own and belongs to another person. Seeking to own does not mean just envying, or in the case of your neighbor's spouse, just lusting after. Neither envy nor lust is prohibited in the Ten Commandments. Uncontrolled envy and lust can surely lead to bad things, and they can both be psychologically and emotionally destructive. But neither one is prohibited in the Ten Commandments. Why? Because neither is the same as coveting. It is coveting that almost inevitably leads to stealing, to adultery, and sometimes even to murder. Let me explain this in another way. The 10th commandment does not prohibit you from saying, "Wow, what a great house or car or spouse my neighbor has. I wish I had such a house or car or spouse." That may end up being destructive, but it may also end up being constructive. How? It may spur you to work harder and improve your life so that you can obtain a house or car or spouse like your neighbors. It is when you want and seek to gain possession of the specific house, car, or spouse that belongs to another that evil ensues, and that is what the 10th commandment prohibits. Therefore, one of these 10 commandments, these 10 basic rules of life, must be that we simply cannot allow ourselves to covet what belongs to our neighbor. Whatever belongs to another person must be regarded as sacrosanct. We cannot seek to own anything that belongs to another, because only evil can come of it. A good case can be made that the 8th commandment, "Do not steal," is the one commandment that encompasses all the others. How does "do not steal" encompass the other commandments? Well, murder is the stealing of another person's life. Adultery is the stealing of another person's spouse. Coveting is the desire to steal what belongs to another person. Giving false testimony is stealing justice, and so on. This commandment is unique in another way. It is the only commandment that is completely open-ended. All the other commandments are specific. The 5th commandment, for example, states that it is our parents whom we should honor. The 6th commandment, prohibiting murder, is about taking the life of an innocent human being. The 7th commandment, prohibiting adultery, is also specific to a married person. 2 unmarried people cannot commit adultery. But the commandment against stealing doesn't even hint at what it is we're forbidden to steal, which means that we cannot take anything that belongs to another person. And that, in turn, means 3 big things. First and foremost, the commandment against stealing has always been understood to mean that we are not allowed to steal another human being, what we call kidnapping. That is why no one who had even an elementary understanding of the 8th commandment could ever use the Bible to justify the most common form of slavery, the kidnapping of human beings and selling them into slavery. Critics of the Bible argue that the Bible allowed slavery, but the type of slavery described was in almost all cases what was known as indentured servitude, the selling of oneself to another person for a fixed period of time in order to work off a debt. This had nothing to do with kidnapping free people, such as was done in Africa and elsewhere. That was expressly forbidden by the 8th commandment. The second significant meaning of the commandment against stealing is the sanctity of people's property. Just as we are forbidden to steal people, we are forbidden to steal what people own. It has been shown over and over that private property, beginning with land ownership, is indispensable to creating a free and decent society. Every totalitarian regime takes away private property rights. In the ancient and medieval world, a few rich people owned all the land, and the majority of the population worked on that land for the enrichment of the owners. And then, in 19th century Europe, many socialists argued for taking away private property and giving it to the quote-unquote people. Where that advice was followed, in what came to be known as the communist world, theft of property quickly resulted in theft of freedom and ultimately massive theft of life. The third enormously important meaning of the commandment against stealing concerns the many non-material things each person owns: their reputation, their dignity, their trust, and their intellectual property. Let's quickly run through these. 1. A person's reputation. Stealing a person's good name, whether through libel, slander, or gossip, is a particularly destructive form of theft because, unlike money or property, once a person's good name has been stolen, it can almost never be fully restored. 2. A person's dignity. The act of stealing a person's dignity is known as humiliation, and humiliating a person, especially in public, can do permanent damage to what is perhaps the most precious thing any of us owns: our dignity. 3. A person's trust. Stealing a person's trust is known as deceiving someone. In fact, in Hebrew, a term for tricking someone is gnevat da'at, which literally means stealing knowledge. One example is tricking people into buying something, as when a real estate agent omits telling a prospective purchaser all the flaws in a home in order to make a sale. Another example would be when someone deceives another person with insincere proclamations of love in order to obtain material or sexual favors. 4. A person's intellectual property. This form of theft includes anything from copying software or downloading music and movies without paying for them to stealing a person's words, or what we know as plagiarism. Stealing a life, a person, a spouse, material property, intellectual property, a reputation, dignity, or trust. There is hardly any aspect of human life that is not harmed, sometimes irreparably so, by stealing. That is why it is fair to say that if everyone observed only one of the 10 commandments, observing the commandment "do not steal" would, all by itself, make a beautiful world. I'm Dennis Prager. Join Prager University, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and sign up for free at prageru.com.
While we're doing our work there in the Sinda, we're doing some work over here because Pastor Noni told me, okay, let's have Pastor Hector to build up the church. Because actually the condition of the church is not like this before. Since you don't have any values in you, can you just look at the church? You see, like maybe I can call myself the first custodian of this church under Pastor Hector.
So when the devil starts to attack us and discourage us, we love you, Lord. Your name is miraculous, Jesus. Your name is supernatural, Jesus.
Nowadays we have staff, we have videographers, we have photographers, we have sound people, we have volunteers. We are a different organization.
This is the entrance of the